everybody? Hope you guys are all doing super swell. We over here have had a pretty decent 2 weeks, but let's not waste any time with any of that just yet, and let's get into a few quick little time lapses. And I'll see you guys on the other side. So this guy needs a bed, basically just a wooden plank here, so it'll be usable. So when you drive the chisel bit down, it doesn't hit metal, it hits wood instead. So let's make that real quick. So, got into a little bit of camera trouble this week. That's why you guys didn't see many of the projects. Could not find a charger that my camera liked for some reason. Finally found one, so I have a fully charged camera again, so thank goodness for that. You know, without that, you guys wouldn't see me work in hyperspeed all the time. So it's been 2 weeks since I've talked to you guys. And in that 2 weeks, two things have happened. One being Kim and I went back up to Wisconsin for one final trip. As I told you guys if you watched the machine episode, successfully, the last 7-ish thousand pounds of machinery is back safe here in Missouri. And of course that ate up an entire week. It is 10.5 hours up there, and of course 10.5 hours back after having loaded all of the equipment onto a trailer and into the van. And then of course the unload process, which is another fiasco because I don't have a tractor down here to unload them. I can definitely say that when moving very, very heavy things, leverage is your best friend. For what I got though, I got a lathe, which has some tooling that I'll show you guys here in a bit because my lathe was missing some. I got 2 more molders, and I got some sort of horizontal boring machine from the 20s. This week, if I'm being entirely honest, I was a bit aimless. Actually tomorrow, I fly out for Mexico for 2 weeks. Really quickly, the reason Kim can't go is Kim is terrified of flying. The job she took was dependent on her going to Mexico. So I figured, okay, you do that part, and when it comes time for me to go, I will go to Mexico and complete the last end of the job. But it is a job, and it is more funds than I make here on the channel. So it means it's more funds I can throw into the house. So let me show you what I've done with my tiny little shop here. I have to say, it's kind of become my little sanctuary, so. I kind of realize now this is a space I really haven't shown to you guys very much, but this is my new little workbench. I say new, I've used it a little bit, and I've had it for probably 8 or 9 months now. I got it in an estate sale, and it's quite handy. I have 2 vices on here, wooden vices. I've been using this one quite a bit because it's more out in the open. While I was tinkering and trying to figure out what I was going to do this week, I actually built this shelf, which I think is quite nice. These brackets were actually found in the garage, and then I was given a bucket of rusty parts, random things, door locks, hinges, all different things. And an extra one of these brackets was in that matched the other one. So now I have a full set. And of course up here I have a few things, some cutter heads, a hanger, some grinding discs, some oil, a whole stack of old levels, and then maybe the coolest thing on the entire shelf, which is all of my catalogs. You know, of course there's a huge section of Holland Brown here. This one here is also Holland Brown. This is a Sydney Famous, which is new. And then this one is a J.A. Fay and Egan, which is another machine company. And then some cool little electrical manuals from probably the 20s. And some other random newer books. But, you know, I really like those things being on the shelf. It's kind of like a shelf of some of my favorite things. Or things that just aren't in service yet that will be soon. I have to say though, this J. Fay and Egan catalog is one of the most beautiful bits of print as far as the covers are concerned. Just really pretty. And of course on the inside, very similar to the Hall & Brown catalogs. Just shows off some of their machinery. So moving left from that area, we come to a very newly utilized section of the house. And I've got two machines, one you've seen before, which is the Mortiser, and one you guys have never seen before, which is a drill press. So you can see this is actually sold by J.W. Wright & Co. So this was essentially a seller of the machine, not the manufacturer. The manufacturer though is extremely hard to make out. All I can see is that it was made in Rockford, Illinois. That's all I really know about it. But it is a belt-driven machine, although it has been modified to run with an electrical engine down here. Onto the step pulley, where you can control the speed of said drill press. And this one I just got set up and it works. So again, modified with a little switch here. If you pull the switch, the belt goes. And so does the bit right here. So the motor is connected to that pulley there, which drives this pulley, which drives the machine. It works quite well. So we have our hole. Let's just switch it back off. So there you go. It's a drill press. It isn't really anything terribly special. I got it for very cheap like 3 or 4 months ago, and it's kind of just been chilling in here in the garage. I've been meaning to show it to you guys, but here it is working. The amazing thing to me though is kind of hearing the belt going. This is again the first belt-driven machine I have functional, working, ready to go. And I have to say I am rather excited about it. Just the sound, the smell of it, all of it's really, infectious to me. I really love it. And of course it adds quite a bit of utility for really almost no money. I think I gave $80 for this thing, and it was like a town and a half away over on the Illinois side. And one thing about it is it actually makes this machine possible to use, because this machine is a mortiser, which means it makes the square hole for the square peg. Now admittedly this isn't a very clean version of that hole, but this is one I made earlier. The entire mechanism is actually a spring up here. It's an old like carriage spring, and it has this pedal here on the floor on the base, which you press down with your foot, and it drives this chisel down into whatever you're trying to cut. It also has this mechanism here where you can turn the blade 180 degrees to get your cut the other way around. This I have set back and forward so I can cut the front and back of this little mortise here. Again, this is a form of joinery, so you would have a square peg to go into your square hole. But you can't just use just the chisel to drive through the board. You need to drill out along the edge, so you're just cutting little bits of wood, not all of it. So this takes out most of the material, and you get your square hole made on this machine. And of course, I do own a machine that does these two processes as one thing. It is called a hollow chisel mortiser. We talked about this in the machine video, but essentially this does both practices. So you can see it is a chisel with a drill bit inside of it. You can see how the drill bit will take most of the material away, and the chisel part of it will actually take and make a square hole for you. So pretty nifty little thing. And now you can kind of understand the brilliance of a machine that runs these things, because it essentially replaces two machines. Also made this little bed really quickly out of a piece of maple that my buddy Eric gave me. It has a little bit of termite damage, but no current termites in it. So those parts are actually on the bottom and the back. But all I really needed it to be was square, and it works pretty well. And now I don't have to worry about my chisel going to hit metal, which would dull it, obviously. So now I have some functionality down here, which is kind of fun. This is also a very good way to kind of learn how to make a mortise. Also set up some more tooling here. This is definitely not extensive. There is so much of this stuff I brought back from Wisconsin. I am slightly struggling figuring out places to put it here in the house, but a lot of it I do want close because I have started utilizing a lot of it. You know, just the chisels for this, I mean, I brought a bunch of those home. Same thing with the drill bits. I brought quite a few drill bits home. So having those things close is nice. So coming into the left again, that door there goes essentially to where the coal bunker would have been back in the day. We have an old 1920s GE monitor top, which I'll utilize in the house here at some point. That one actually works, it runs, the condenser, everything's fine on it. But the cord, yeah, the cord itself isn't something I really trust super duper well. When you start seeing the electrical tape and kind of frayed ends and stuff like that, probably not the best idea to run it. But you know, someday soon this will make a wonderful shop fridge down here, I think. Of course I have a larger one that'll go upstairs, but this one's a bit small for an actual kitchen fridge. You couldn't get more than a few popsicles in the freezer, for example, so pretty small, but it'll be perfect down here in the basement. Moving to the left again, we get to the lathe. Now, of course, for those who don't know, a lathe is what you would use to make, say, spindles for a staircase. You make bowls and stuff like this. I'm sure a few of you guys watch people turn various things on a lathe. Essentially, it spins on its axis and you can use tools on a rest like this to cut things into round shapes. So pretty important for a Victorian house to have a lathe. Mine, of course, is a Holland Brown, a very, very beautiful restored one, which still has the line shaft pulleys on it and the step pulley, of course, which corresponds with this guy here. So if we go back to the drill press really quickly, you can see step pulley here, step pulley there. If you go to the bigger pulley down here, onto this smaller pulley here, the drill will speed up. And opposite, if you go to the small pulley here, to the big pulley here, it will be slower. So this is actually your speed control. And it's no different with the headstock here. This is actually something I'm thinking about getting hooked up very, very soon. If you can imagine a piece of wood clamped between here, you would take your tool, rest it on here, and you could round over a square stock piece or a square board into a perfectly round shape like a dowel rod. You can create spindles, all sorts of things, and all of it's done with lathe tools like this, or lathe chisels. So getting this hooked up will, again, of course, improve what I can do here. It ups my capacity, it ups the things I can make here. And we actually are missing one spindle here in the house for the staircase. I would really, really love to make it myself here on this lathe in the basement of the house. Again, it's always such an amazing feeling knowing that I'm putting this guy's house back together with his tools. So yeah, really kind of want to get this up and going. Plus, this is a really, really hard thing to master. It takes, you know, a while. So I'd like to go ahead and get up and going with this and practice and play around and see what I can achieve. Also, with the size of the shop and some of the size of the other tools, this is probably a tool that will live here in the basement for quite some time. I was also looking at it, I also have two of these, which are hangers, which hang a shaft through the center here. I have two of these, and I also noticed this pulley here was the same dimension as that. And also so is this pulley here. So I was thinking if I can combine all these pieces, I could probably hook up a mini line shaft here. To use an example to teach everyone what a line shaft is and how it functions, and also get functionality out of my lathe. The ceilings down here in the basement are almost 9 feet tall, or right at, so there's plenty of room because those hangers are so diminutive. They're very small. They're not giant things like these, even though these are probably middle size. There are ones that are much, much bigger than that. And also I think a pretty important learning, you know, baby step into getting me fully into how a line shaft works, how it functions. What do you have to do to run it correctly? What are the mistakes? Because I know I'm gonna make mistakes. But I've got all the pieces now, and why not? Now, of course, this isn't something that's going to take precedent over the Mansard roof or tuck pointing or any of that. In fact, this entire week wasn't actually supposed to be about any of this. But I slightly, if you will, got out of my depth a bit this week. Last week, of course, going to get the machines and all of that, I knew that was going to happen, and I knew I needed to go do that. That closes out that chapter. But here was this little week, you know, this current week, where I couldn't really start any major projects because I was going to be gone for 2 weeks. So this entire week to me was more of a
let's get something nice done for myself. That way, when I get back, I can hit the ground running onto the much larger projects. You know, more or less, this ends up being a little place for me to come and kind of relax and be surrounded by things I like. It's a step away room, if you will, but it's also something that, you know, again, extends my range. You know, this area down here is probably going to be a workshop for the next 5 or 6 years until I can get something very serious set up here on property. Now, the garage in the back is still going to be a workshop, and I still do plan on making a rather large extension to that. Of course, if I can get the land next door, then that becomes an even larger extension. But this is the baby step. This is the testing grounds, the proving grounds, if you will, for what I plan to do in the future. Again, preservation for me is more than likely going to be my full career. I think I have found a very deep love of doing these things, of working on these things. And I have a real fascination with, of course, how all of this was made. How was it put together? And so somehow I ended up in a house that really led me down this path of discovering really what I want to give my life to. So that's going to do it for this week, guys. I know it's probably not the video you guys were expecting or hoping for. I know everybody likes to see the really pretty stuff. Not that I think any of this stuff is ugly. In fact, I find it really beautiful. However, I know it's not directly house related. But I had this little throwaway week where I really couldn't start and hop into anything big because I wouldn't be here to complete it for the next 2 weeks. But all of this does go a long way for me learning new skills, new talents to be able to apply to them in the house. Again, I got my first belt-driven machine up and running. I think that's a huge milestone. I'm able to utilize some of these tools that I've had in my possession for a while now. And I've really wanted to kind of figure out how these things work, because it's going to, again, be a huge bonus when I can get these things up and working, because it means I can fix basically anything in the house now. No challenge is insurmountable when you have the correct tool for the job and a willingness to do it, of course. The bigger thing is I now have a clean, set up place to actually work and get some more things done. In a place here in the basement that is not only heated but cooled, so it's comfortable year-round down here. So it's just a huge improvement on quality of life down here. So essentially, kind of a reset week. And yes, it'll be a while before we see another house-related video because of this 2-week absence I have to go through, which no, I'm not terribly excited about. I would rather be here working. This is my happy place. But it is necessary, and you know, as it is, time to time you have to do things you don't want to do. So I'm gonna make the best of it. I will probably share that with you guys in a few weeks, a few little things I got to see. Who knows, maybe it'll be an exciting, fun little adventure. But it's also a work trip, so it probably won't be a fun, exciting adventure. In the meantime, the channel will not be absent. I do have plans for some random content that I'm gonna throw up. I don't entirely know what that all will be, but it'll be some fun stuff. And that way you guys at least know that I haven't forgotten about you, because I'll be editing it down there in Mexico, So as always, guys, thank you so very much for joining me. Not every week is going to be a big grand week where huge things are accomplished, but sometimes we all have to take the little victories. And I think this week was a little victory for me. I'm quite excited about the things I got done. So I hope you guys all have a fantastic week, and I will see you guys again really soon. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.